Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. This is Dr. Richard Owen, and
I'm a surefire.
And Uncle Bocce is absentee this evening, although we have his Uncle Bocce's brief available so we don't lose our history lesson as everyone is so excited about hearing. As you know, we are all over the social media as Doc Owen Show, DOCOWENSHOW. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, two primary sources. We're cranking up a blog called docowenshow.com. That is the best place to go, and look over on the right-hand side at the very top, and you'll see you can sign up for our email blasts and get good notice of the show. We don't abuse the privilege of having your email address, nor do we ever sell or let go of them. All you got to do is put in your first name, last name, and email address, and there you are. It's all done. Plain and simple. So tonight, you may be aware, if you're not, you're in for a pleasant surprise. We have a conversation with a gentleman by the name of Dinesh D'Souza, and I'm really looking forward to it. Mr. D'Souza is a conservative rock star, and you will understand why after we have this conversation with him. But before we get into that, let's do our traditional method of opening, and that would be a moment of inspiration from Ms. Surefire, and I'll follow it up with a leadership quote. Emma, take it away.
Tonight's quote, as usual, comes from inspirationaldaily.com, and it's from a gentleman by the name of George Bernard Shaw.
Yep.
He was an Irish playwright, critic, and polemicist.
Huh?
So remember that word, folks.
Polemicist?
Because later on, you're going to hear a little bit more about it.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yes. And Mr. Shaw's work influenced Western culture from the 1880s and beyond. And his quote is, "We are made wise not by the recollection of our past, but by the responsibility for our future."
Interesting.
Yes.
You're not made wise by the past, but responsibility for the future. Okay.
That means go forward.
Yep. Interesting.
Yeah.
Falls right in with our leadership quote from Crowned Grace International. In essence, if we want to direct our lives, we must take control of our consistent actions. It's not what we do once in a while that shapes our lives, but what we do consistently. And that's from Anthony Robbins, who's a motivational speaker.
I like that one.
It's a good one. So let's turn the airwaves over to Uncle Bocce in absentia and listen to the ongoing history that we left off with last week. Okie doke, folks. It is now time for our Doc Owen Show historian, Uncle Bocce, and Uncle Bocce's brief. Take it away, sir.
Hello, everybody. ¿Cómo se va? Last week, we ended up with talking about some slavery in Africa, and the last thing that we did was said that slavery in Africa itself predated written record. So it goes back a long, long time.
Yeah, and if you weren't with us last week, I highly recommend you go grab the podcast and listen to the Uncle Bocce section, because it was quite informative for everyone. And
yes,
I think it was even informative for Uncle Bocce as he was digging through history.
It really
to
was.
find out. It was really cool. You need to go listen to it. Go ahead, sir.
All right, so today then, the slavery known to Africans prior to European contact did not involve the concept of belief that slaves were inferior, or that the blacks were an inferior race.
Okay.
That was not common to the African slave.
Pure economics.
Yeah, it was just purely economics. Now, most slaves in West Africa, they were captured in war. I mean, that's
Okay.
the way they got.
Gotcha.
They got their slaves because they become the subjugated peoples. Now, although they were legally considered property, still that concept of them being property.
Right.
Most African slaves were treated as family members. They just extended their family, so they didn't treat them with bullwhips and all this kind of thing.
Right.
They treated them as family members. Their children could not be sold into slavery.
Did they use the term slavery? I mean, you know
Back
what I'm saying?
then?
Yeah,
Well-
back then. Was the terminology, as we've seen over our lifetimes, and more, sometimes the terminology changes, and or the definition of the term changes. So that's the reason I was curious. Maybe they had something to call them besides slaves.
Remember back even further than this.
Yep.
Remember in Egypt, remember the Hebrews?
Yeah.
They were called slaves.
Okay.
Okay, so
The workers,
concept,
the laborers were referred to as slaves.
and we're going to draw a distinction in a minute.
Okay.
About that. But yeah, their children, it was against the law for them to be bought or sold as children because they kept the family unit.
Oh.
Now, many of these West Africans achieved high honors in their communities and freedom by, here's a big word, manumission. Don't get afraid of that word.
I had a 58 Ford that kept going out on.
Yeah, manumission.
Yeah.
Yeah, the manual transmission. Hey, that's good. I didn't even think of that one. I like it. Okay, so freedom by manumission was not uncommon. Manumission is just a fancy word for saying that it's the act of a slave owner freeing his slave. So it was a pretty common practice that they would free their slaves. The concept of plantation slavery was virtually unknown on the African continent. So there was no such thing as plantation slavery.
Which is what, in America, when we hear slavery, that's all we know of it.
Yes,
Right.
and that's also a myth that we will bust in
I hate it
future.
when you do that.
Yeah, well, hey, listen. what can I
Go
tell you?
ahead, put that teaser out there.
So that plantation slavery was totally unknown. The slave trade actually, though, did bring ruin to West Africa. And you can imagine, because entire villages were disappearing because of the slave trade. Guns and alcohol was spread across the continent. Tribes were turning against other tribes as the once fabled empires were fading into history. Mm-hmm. Remember those big empires that I told you? So some people call this the diaspora of African peoples around the world had begun. Just as there was the diaspora of the Hebrews from Egypt, and when they got their own land and then they were taken away, and they were spread out all over the world.
Right.
And I even have an interesting history lesson about that, but that will come later when we get more into the American founding.
Okay.
So basically, that's really where we are at this point.
Okay, let's talk the diaspora.
Yes.
Why use that word versus disbursement?
Well, it's really.
Do you know?
No, I don't.
It's okay. I mean,
There's obviously a difference between the two.
I wonder if it's in reference. I wonder if it's because it's talking about mankind.
It could be.
Like a living species.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be Okay, that's a good note for the listeners. That's a homework assignment for you. Find
Tell
out the
us
difference between diaspora and disbursement find out what the difference is. Put it on our Facebook page or email one of us on the show, and you'll win a fantastic, unbelievable, off the charts prize.
Yes, sir.
Have no idea what it is,
Absolutely.
but we'll come up with something.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
And that's pretty much all that I have for this week.
That's all you got for this week?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
short, sweet, and to the point.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what do you forget? What did you forget? Page 2? You printed it on both sides, remember?
No. You know what?
Okay.
Hold on a second here.
That's okay. We're not live.
Yeah.
You want us to start over? What'd you do? Just use the wrong cue?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll cut it.
Cut it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so that was a little look behind the scenes. There. We did not cut the end of that. No particular reason, just didn't do it. But I would like to announce the winner of the contest. We during that segment, if you noticed, we said we'd have a contest for the person that could tell us the difference between diaspora and disbursement. And actually, Ms. Surefire was right in the background there. Diaspora has to do with citizenship, civilians, human element to it, versus disbursement referring to plants and chemicals and non-human sort of things being dispersed. And what happened was we got an email from a good friend of the show by the name of Sal Castellanos, and Mr. Castellanos won 2 free tickets to go listen to Dinesh D'Souza yesterday evening as he was there to sign books. So, Sal, thank you very much for the input, and congratulations. We're going to take a brief commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas.
Call 1-800-352-3127. Again, 1-800-352-3127. A fee-based company.
Welcome back, or welcome aboard if you're just joining us. We are about to have a conversation with one of the largest conservative rock stars that's out there. He is an author and a filmmaker of late, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Dinesh D'Souza. If you don't know who Mr. D'Souza is, please go to your Google machine and look it up. It's Dinesh, D''S"Ouza. And just as a brief background, he grew up in India till he was about 17 years old. Became a naturalized American citizen in 1991, graduate of Dartmouth College, and has written about 15 books, I think he said.
Yes.
And has now produced his 3rd film. And his first one came out in 2012. The name of it was 2016, Obama's America. And he gave a look forward based on, what he had learned from reading Obama's work as well as about him. And his second film was America, Imagine the World Without Her, an excellent movie. Mm-hmm. And his third, which is now out that you really need to go see, is Hillary's America, A History of the Democratic Party. And it's a change in gears. It's an excellent documentary. And all these 3 shows, by the way, have hit major home runs. Dinesh sets records every time he does something. And as you listen to him, you will totally understand why. So sit back, grab a beverage, and enjoy the next 15 to 20 minutes as much as we did having the conversation. Oh, okay. There we go. Now we are live. May I call you Dinesh?
Sure.
Okay, great. I gotta tell you, you look like you are having an awful lot of fun every time I see you on television or the internet or any type of media. You got a grin like a young boy that's just walked into a candy store. So I totally, really appreciate the way you attack life. Is sort of the way. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I got to tell you a funny anecdote before we start. Someone was saying on one of these shows I was on, he was saying, Dinesh, did you engineer your own federal prosecution for your own career benefit? And I was like, that's the Dinesh's evil genius theory that you're perpetrating. In any event, we can get started when you're ready.
Yeah, we are started.
Okay.
And I noticed in your in some of the back, one of the quotes that I read about out of the Young Conservative book, that you were talking about the death penalty, and you made the statement that although your personal observation is that none of the criminals who have been executed over the years have ever killed again. So
deterrence does work.
Yes, sir. It does have a tendency to work. Let's talk about. I've seen the movie. Saw it when it very first came out, and was kind of did a fist pump for you. I think you did a fabulous job. And I tell our audience, I mean, who are we after? I mean, this one doesn't appear to be preaching to the choir like the previous two did. It's a bit more of an education.
This was my third film.
Yes,
the first one, Obama, was just looking at the secret history of one man, Obama.
Yes, sir.
And then my America film was a defense of rational patriotism. In this movie, I tried to lift the curtain on the Democratic Party, not just on Hillary, but also on the whole sordid history of the Democrats. And this is a party that has done a beautiful job of covering up its tracks.
Man.
It's been implicated in the worst deeds of American history, and yet it's done an excellent job in blaming its actions on the South or on America or on the Republicans. So my movie and an accompanying book, Hillary's America, the same title, is intended to blow the whistle on this.
And it does an excellent job. It doesn't prevent them, but it certainly tends to short-circuit their desire to reconstruct history in their own best interest, which I think is probably part of the intent.
The progressives are very clever. They dominate academia, they dominate Hollywood and the media, and so they know they can put out a lot of propaganda without anyone having a big enough megaphone to contradict them. They've also come up with all kinds of fallback arguments so that they don't like to bring up their role in slavery or segregation or the Ku Klux Klan or lynching. But when you bring it up and you force them to answer, they go, well, yeah, but at the last minute, the two parties switched sides. We Democrats became the good guys,
right,
and Republicans became the bad guys. Now, this is all nonsense. I mean,
sure,
on the face of it, the whole idea that two parties would switch places is preposterous, but it never happened.
Oh, I know that, but they unfortunately, there are way too many young people who accept that version. I won't say buy into the argument, but they just accept the version. They don't have the logical thinking skills that they should have to drive through it.
Well, it isn't just that. I mean, even Republicans sometimes buy into it. I remember going back to the 1980s, even Reagan used to say, I didn't leave the Democratic Party, it left me. And so Reagan was kind of implying the Democrats were okay guys, but then they maybe just went off track sometime toward the very end or quite recently. I think when you look at the history of this party, you see that they've been doing bad stuff since the 1820s, which is the days of Andrew Jackson.
So you're saying the notion, of which I am one that exists that has the notion that back in the 40s and the 50s, when I was a young man, and starting to pay attention to politics when I was about 10 or 12 years old, we had what we thought were conservative Democrats. And you're saying that those were we may have had some in Texas, but they were very rare, is what you're telling us.
Well, I'm saying that there are good people in the Democratic Party, but I'm saying that the Democratic leadership, you go back to Andrew Jackson, and you continue all the way, Woodrow Wilson.
Yes, sir.
FDR has the reputation of being a saint, but when you actually look at the way that he dealt with the racists in his own party, cutting deals to block anti-lynching legislation, his sympathy for Mussolini and Italian fascism, all this stuff has been swept under the rug.
I understand. And all of that is pointed out and documented in Hillary's America. So I got it. And I don't remember it as well as you do. But there's an awful lot of content in there that, I'd like for the audience to understand that this guy, he's not just a filmmaker, he's a researcher. I mean, I guarantee you on his epitaph it will go down that he's a prolific writer. I lost count of the books, Dinesh. I had no idea. I mean, you put out something every couple of years at a minimum.
Well, I've done 15 books, and most of my career, I was a writer and speaker and not a filmmaker. I just got into the movies 4 years ago to reach a wider audience.
Yes, sir.
And so part of what I'm doing in this book is showing, and the movie is showing that Hillary, with all her shenanigans, with all the Bonnie and Clyde operations that she and Bill have been running, they are simply the latest incarnation. They're simply the latest edition of a Democratic Party sort of subjugation and rip-off scheme that's been going on now for many, many decades.
So put on your forecasting hat, which you're pretty good at doing, and extend this out for us. When do you see it? My constant question is, when is America going to get enough? I
think Americans have already had enough,
all right.
But I think they're also fearful about where to go from here. Now, Hillary is a little bit of a different character than Obama. Some people think that Hillary is going to be just essentially a 12-year term for Obama, but no. I think at the end of the day, Obama is an ideologue. Now, to my way of thinking, his ideology is pathetic, it's destructive, but poor man, he believes it. He thinks he's doing good for America and for the world.
He's totally
With Hillary and Bill, these are basically two gangsters. I mean, they're two rip-off artists. They've been running scams since the Arkansas days, and they are on the make and on the take. And so I would expect a Hillary's America to be more third worldish, more gangsterized than an Obama's America.
Yes, sir. I would expect it to be, as you point out, far more blatant. It's already become that in her quest to run for office. It's already become that.
It's kind of like if you have a meeting with the Clintons, make sure you bring a suitcase of cash.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to go there, but if anybody in the audience happens to have an ex-wife or that they think needs some direction, they should introduce them to the Clintons.
Boy, what a duo this is. And I think Bill was bad enough because Bill is unscrupulous. He's a pathological liar, the same as Hillary. But I think Hillary has a tyrannical streak that we didn't see in Bill.
No, I completely agree. Bill would back off and put on the country boy act, and Hillary makes no bones about it whatsoever. She doesn't even try. To me, she doesn't. If she tries to hide it, she's not very good at it. Let's put it, not nearly as good as he was.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So, what can we do? What should we tell our young folks about? I mean, other than go see the movie and pay attention and read your books or listen to some podcasts, or go out to DineshD'Souza.com and take advantage of some of that stuff. How else can we get them? What would you say about the movie that would attract them to go see it rather than the older crowd? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, sure. Well, the movie is very. It's both entertaining and it's not only intellectually stimulating, but it's emotionally powerful. I hope you'll agree, as someone who saw that movie, that it has those qualities. I think with young people, the challenge for them is that we've seen in America, and this is across the board, a kind of lowering of the sights. And by that I mean, when I was 19 or 20 years old, I looked up to people like Bill Buckley, Irving Kristol, Solzhenitsyn, Friedrich Hayek, Milton Friedman. And today, you can't find people of that caliber on the scene. Even the kind of statesmen that we saw commonly in both parties in American politics, Howard Baker, George Shultz, who was Secretary of State under Reagan.
Yes, sir.
You don't have people of that stature, again, very easily found today. So we need a kind of restoration of American politics and of American intellectual life.
Oh, very. And by the way, to back all the way up to the beginning of your statement, it was very entertaining.
Yeah.
You spent your you spent your time in the clink very well.
No.
you obviously observed and noted in order to endure. And I could see. I felt like, gee, this probably really happened to him. So
you know what? It was actually exactly the way it was. There's an article out in Esquire today where they go, this guy was so over the top in his recreations. No, the judge actually prohibited me from filming the confinement center, so I had to create a movie set that looked exactly like it.
Yeah, but I still got. I'm sure that was true. I felt that was true. But I also felt like the characters and the information and what you observed while you were there was very real. I just, that I don't know if that was the intent you portrayed it. You did a great job.
Well, one thing I love about this film is at the end of the film, and this is true across the country, it doesn't matter if it's Red America or Blue America, audiences that see this movie will stand up and thunderously clap at the end. And how often do you see that in a movie theater?
Not very often. Not very often at all. Even if it's a target audience and the audience is 100%. No, I agree with you. The response that it receives in the first time we saw it was excellent, and I didn't poll the house to figure out who was on what side, but it was very well done. There was one other thing that I wanted to add. You used a term. I did some reading on Wikipedia to get some more information than I was able to glean elsewhere. There's a term used. What is it? A polyemical film? How do you pronounce it? Where it's an opinion type film. Are you familiar with it?
Sure.
Did you write
the
it?
word is polemical, and
Okay.
polemical means a film that is sort of with a point of view. Now,
Yes.
sometimes when the left uses that term, they're acting as though conservative films are polemical or argumentative, but let's say Michael Moore's films or Oliver Stone's films are not.
Oh, correct.
In my opinion, all political films are polemical. They always have a point of view. And the real question is, do you argue for your point of view fairly and intelligently,
Nice.
or do you argue for your point of view like a dummy? And I think one important difference between Michael Moore's films and mine can be described in the level of intellectual content in those films.
I would. I've not seen a Michael Moore film just based on principle, but I have seen yours, and I would agree. It's just that was what we in Texas call a $1 word, and I'd not ever seen it before, so I had to make sure I was pronouncing it correctly.
No problem.
I'm not often at a loss of words, but for some reason I am with you. What else do we need the audience to know about this film that, without giving away any secrets? I mean, you're a guy, Dinesh, that obviously does your homework. You either, I get the feeling that you personally do an awful lot of your own research, that you like to know for sure the facts and present them in a very entertaining manner, as is befitting of your personality. Is that a true statement? Do you have a crew that helps you out?
Well, we have a small film team of about 10 of us that make these movies. I write the books on my own, typically with the help of a research assistant. And, yes, I am careful about the facts, and I'm careful to know what I'm talking about. But I think also equally important, I'm an immigrant to this country. I was born in Bombay, India. I came to the United States with $500 in my pocket. And so I've seen the American dream, these ladders of opportunity that this country makes available to people at the bottom. And that's really what my politics is based on.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, what scares me about Obama and Hillary is they're knocking down these ladders of opportunity and replacing them with dependency. And so the Democratic model is not one of people climbing up the ladder. It's essentially the Democrats on top of a roof, and they're letting down a rope, and they ask you to hang on to the rope, and they will pull you up. But this keeps you permanently beholden to them, and they never pull you all the way up.
Right.
And so we have whole communities in this country that have become dependent on these Democrats, and they can never get out of poverty.
Why is it that so often, at least to me, it seems so often that foreigners, folks that did not grow up in this country, have a far better view, understanding, and even too often appreciation for what we have here. That's always kind of befuddled me.
Well, I think the reason for that is that when you live in this country, you take for granted the good things that it has,
Yep.
and you tend to compare it to perfection. I call it the utopian or Garden of Eden standard. Whereas if you're an immigrant, you come from another country, and you have some actual basis of comparison. You're saying, okay, well, there's prejudice in America, but is India free of prejudice? Is Venezuela free of prejudice? Do the Russians not have any prejudice? So you're actually comparing America to other countries in the world, and by this actual historical standard,
Yeah.
America comes off looking really good.
Yeah, and we can go visit places, but still not get the true essence of what you're saying until you live there for a while, and really get a feel for it. Particularly having grown up in it. And by the way, you became an American citizen in 1991. Is
Yes,
that
I
correct?
did. So I've actually lived most of my adult life here, although the first 17 years of my life in India.
Which is tough. You have to be India, from the folks that I know from there, an awful lot out of the IT business, the academic competition is very, very stiff. So it speaks volumes for you to have come over here as an exchange student and graduated from Dartmouth and been the editor of the school magazine, et cetera. I don't think people understand how much that says.
Well, I think it's also that those countries are defined by a lot of gangsterism and a lot of corruption. You saw it if you watched the movie Slumdog Millionaire, the country is run by gangs. My wife is from Venezuela. It's the same thing over there. So we come to America and we want to live in a country where you're uncontaminated by corruption, at least not corruption in the same blatant way.
Right.
And that's really what the Clintons represent. They represent the increasing third worldization and gangsterization of America.
I completely agree with you, and I thoroughly appreciate your voice in pointing that out, and we will do all that we can as well. What else would you like to leave with our audience? We're coming up on about 20 minutes, and I'm very respectful of your time. So,
well, I'd just like to say that for most of my career, I was a writer and speaker. And the reason I've got to making movies is that movies are a way to reach people that you wouldn't reach in Barnes & Noble or wouldn't buy a hardcover book. I would urge people to go see this movie. We're going to re-release into a bunch of theaters in September. And if you go to Hillary'sAmericaTheMovie.com, that's the website, you can watch a trailer, plug in your zip code. It'll tell you where the movie is playing near you. And my book of the same title is available everywhere.
Absolutely fabulous. And he will be here, well, this will air live on a Thursday night, so he will have been here the night before, but the movie will still be in the theater. So here in San Antonio. So we'll definitely promote it all that we can. Dinesh, thank you very much, sir.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Thank
Look forward to
you.
seeing you soon.
Hey, thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 877-212-5898. Again, 877-212-5898. That's 877-212-5898. 877-212-5898.
Howdy, folks. Welcome back, or welcome aboard. I hope it's welcome back, because if not, you just missed Mr. Dinesh D'Souza. You'll have to listen to the podcast on all of our various platforms, including apps for the iPhone and the Android. You can download at no charge and have the library there with you at all times. So there's still a lot to cover. I'm going to dive into it. We'll try to uphold the standards that Dinesh set. He's a very intelligent guy, very intelligent man. And he does have that grin on his face. The first one, one of the things that has started to cause a bit of unraveling, shall we say, in the political process of running for president is all of the continued scandal around Hillary Clinton. And if you're not familiar, the person that's really responsible for that, of course, is Hillary, but the person that's responsible for putting the information out there is a fellow by the name of Julian Assange. And Julian is, I think he's French, but he's holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy and has been for the last 4 years as they're providing political asylum for him. And you need to Google the term Arkanside, A-R-K-A-N, like Arkansas, and side, C-I-D-E, like suicide. If you're not familiar with all of the deaths, suicides, and accidents that have occurred around the Clintons since they entered political life, it's a very interesting story. And a lot of folks think it is conspiracy theory, but when upwards of 36 people die strangely and they are connected in some way to a Clinton scandal, it's a little bit more, in my mind, than conspiracy theory. And Julian Assange is responsible through his organization called WikiLeaks for putting out these recent emails that caused the flutter and the resignation of a bunch of DNC officials, and, has everybody revisiting this Hillary Clinton email scandal, and probably rightfully so. But it seems that the Ecuadorian embassy had a visitor. An unknown intruder certainly didn't select the Ecuadorian embassy randomly as the target of a burglary. There are much more financially rewarding and less monitored alternatives. It's not likely that he was seeking information on petroleum exports or their cut flowers harvest either. But there is one thing that can be found only in the Ecuadorian London embassy and nowhere else on earth: WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. As has been standard operating procedure for some of those who pose a threat to the Clintons, it may have been time for Assange to commit suicide, is what this article says. And just as a point of reference, 3 people with ties to the Clintons and the DNC have died under suspicious circumstances in recent weeks, in addition to a WikiLeaks attorney, John Jones, in April. The information available on the death of Mr. Jones, who was killed when he was hit by a train, is sketchy at best. Mr. Jones was Julian Assange's attorney. So, the conspiracy theory continues to grow.
Yeah.
One of the things that you may not be aware of and should be about the Trump-Clinton race for the White House is that they are basically redrawing the Electoral College map. A lot of people have issues with the Electoral College. If you're not familiar, the president is basically elected by an electoral college which represents states, and they have a certain number of votes based on the population of their state. So you technically, and it probably has happened in the past, I'm not that up on it right now, where you can win the popular vote and lose the race for the presidency because if you have an overwhelmingly large popular vote in a state that has not very many electoral college votes, then it can wind up looking very lopsided. And so what's happening now is that there are typically very red states that, according to the polls, are leaning more towards the Democrats or more towards being a blue state. And there are also red states that have always voted conservative and always voted Republican and always voted red that are now appear to be up for grabs between the two of these. Mm-hmm. So, and the difference is in the appeal of the two candidates. In other words, what type of voter are they appealing to? And here it also, and by the way, if you're listening, paying attention to, watching, or talking around the water cooler at work about mainstream media polling, or listening to, some of the inside the Beltway crowd, the presidential election has been over for months. It's a done deal. The polls show it. Everybody knows it. Hillary's going to be the next president. However, and I'll give you a fine example of this in just a minute, firsthand knowledge. For the past several weeks, Democrats and their supporters in the liberal media have triumphantly proclaimed the presidential race to be all but over, self-assuredly declaring Democrat presidential nominee Hillary Clinton the presumptive victor over Republican nominee Donald Trump. Imagine their stunned reaction to the latest results of the LA Times USC Daybreak tracking poll, which shows a decidedly different electoral race than the one the media has been reporting on. Instead of Clinton pulling to a decisive lead while Trump's campaign allegedly implodes, the race is actually a virtual tie, with Trump holding a 1-point lead, 44.6 to 43.5. And it breaks down, it breaks down very differently in that Trump's voters are predominantly, he has a huge lead in people without a college degree. Okay? Which, I mean, he is very much appealing to the hardworking,
the blue collar
/ entrepreneur. You don't want to really say blue collar because an awful lot of IT moguls, and I do mean moguls, multimillionaires, don't have college degrees. So, I mean, Bill Gates doesn't have a college degree. There's a bunch of them. So, to categorize people without a college degree as being low income has lost some of that 1-to-1 sort of ratio since the IT world has exploded. Ask yourself a question. On the mainstream media, did you see anything about the Donald Trump rally that was in Austin, Texas? I believe it was on Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday evening.
Tuesday evening.
I didn't. I mean, was it on mainstream media? Was it on the news or anything like that? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Just the local coverage.
The point is, a friend of the show went to that and sent an email afterwards saying that it was a fantastic event, and it was so crowded that they had to turn thousands away because the stadium couldn't hold them. He wasn't holding this thing at a Starbucks. I mean, it was the biggest venue he could find in Austin, Texas, the state capital, and it couldn't hold everybody that wanted to go see and listen to Donald Trump speak. So, it's just huge. So it's going to have to take some sort of gerrymandering via the Electoral College his popularity. It's going to. There's a whole strategy that's going to go on for the next. We're about 75 days out, and it's going to be very, very interesting to watch. So it's sort of a heads up. Not everything you're hearing about is in the mainstream news. One of the things that has been a conspiracy theory and been talked about lately is Hillary Clinton's health. And it appears that Bubba, as we like to call him down here, Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, said something about it and may regret what he said. In his book, author Edward Klein, the name of the book is Unlikable, The Problem with Hillary Clinton, said Bill Clinton believed his wife was too ill to run for president. Last year, Clinton was forced to cancel meetings and cut back on campaigning because of her health. She told those around her that her doctors couldn't find a definitive problem, but Bill believed she was in denial and was ignoring what could be life-threatening symptoms. The former president was so concerned that he asked a cardiologist to review her medical records. After doing so, the physician recommended that the former Secretary of State travel with a doctor full-time so she could remain under constant supervision. She apparently would have none of it. Klein said Bill Clinton was worried that his wife would fall or stumble at a critical moment during her campaign, giving away the fact that she simply wasn't up to the job of being president. But when he approached her about how campaigning was affecting her health, she allegedly blew up at him and said, "You're acting like a effing quitter and loser. You're projecting your own health problems onto me. I'm not dying." Certainly sounds like somebody's in denial to me. At any rate, I think we don't know what it is. There's a lot of conjecture. Therefore, I won't comment on it other than the fact that I think where there's smoke, there's fire. And whether it's enough to keep her from fulfilling the demands of the office of the president or not, that's way outside my scope of capabilities. But it's something that
there's something
gives
there.
you pause.
Yeah.
You remember not too long ago, I think we reported it on the show, it was certainly out there, that Obama administration paid $400 million under the cover of night, supposedly not as a ransom for prisoners that we wanted to have returned, and yet the prisoners were not allowed to be released until the $400 million was paid, but it wasn't a ransom. In the Iran deal, we agreed to give them $1.7 billion total that apparently had been held for some time as a part of the sanctions or whatever. And it seems that the remainder of that 1.7, if you take out 0.4, is $1.3 billion, right? The Obama administration is withholding from Congress details about how $1.3 billion in U.S. taxpayer funds was delivered to Iran, according to conversations with lawmakers who told the Washington Free Beacon that the administration is now stonewalling an official inquiry into the matter. The Departments of State, Treasury, and Justice have all rebuffed a congressional probe into the circumstances surrounding the $1.3 billion payment to Iran. And interestingly enough, it was paid in 13 payments, each being equal to 99 million. Nope. Okay, it's so big. 99,999,999.99. 13 payments of the same exact amount were transferred to Iran. That totals 13 cents shy of $1.3 billion. So if you're familiar at all with banking laws, there's a banking law out there, and I think it has to do with $10,000 transfer out of account that that demands, it has a compliance issue to it or whatever, that you have to be reported for a transfer or a cash withdrawal or anything $10,000 or greater, right?
Yeah.
So I got a feeling that on the federal government level, there must be some kind of a compliance issue that they went to $99 million per instead of one big payment or $100 million. There's a reason they chose 99.999. You know what I'm saying? And it's got to be to quote stay underneath the radar.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It had to be, and so they're stonewall, but they're not telling Congress that. What I think is interesting, I'll throw a conspiracy theory out there for you. Tell you how my mind works. The reason that they're stonewalling is because everybody's assuming that this is taxpayer money, right? It's not. They don't have that kind of money. The federal government doesn't have $1.3 billion to give away. They had to borrow it from the Clinton Foundation, which means we're just giving them money that they contributed to our political process. We're giving it back to them so they can recycle and recircle it. Let's talk just very briefly, because we don't have a lot of time left. One of the things you're going to see, and I do hope you go see Dinesh's movie, Hillary's America. You really need to see that. It's an eye-opener. The strangest thing has happened over history, and it is that the Democrats, the liberals, the progressive, have successfully peddled through the mainstream media and through constant statement of their story, that to make it fact, that back in the day, the Republicans and the Democrats switched sides. Literally switched sides. That all the things that conservatives now stand for, or supposedly now stand for, the Democrats invented. The Democrats, were responsible for freeing the slaves. Utter nonsense. One of the things Dinesh talked about was that there were no Republican owners of slaves. Not a one. Abraham Lincoln came into office as the first Republican president, and the party was formed around the premise of doing away with slavery. That's how strongly they felt about it. And it goes on and on from there. The movie goes into very entertaining, both visually and intellectually, information about the country and about the two parties and what has transpired over time.
Yeah, I recommend that movie too for somebody that's just not sure who they're going to vote for. It'll tell you exactly who not to vote for after you watch that.
Yep. And Dinesh is right. The difference between Obama, who is an ideologue and has a definite opinion about America that is not good, he does not hold this country in high regard as a lot of its citizens do. And the Clinton family is nothing more than a huge corrupt mafia machine. It's very, very different. And it's far more, and that's why Dinesh uses the term gangs. I mean, these guys are gangsters at the highest level, as are the now completely politicized organizations of the State Department and the Treasury Department and the Department of Justice. And these are nothing more than political arms. And they were set up to actually keep the politicians in check. They were set up to keep this sort of abuse from going on. But they've attracted so much money and spread it so far and wide that no one dare go against them. And that's what Dinesh is worried about. That's what I would be worried about, is the mafioso taking over. I was going to talk to you a little bit about the failure of Chicago. Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.